1984, a man named Michael Larson spent his life savings to go to Los Angeles for an audition to a game show called Press Your Luck. The game featured a big board in which 18 squares would light up at seemingly random intervals, and participants would then press a button to trigger the flashing to stop. Contestants would win whatever prize was featured in the box the light landed on, and at times an extra spin. There was also a whammy box which would trigger a little cartoon character to pop up on the screen to steal all the money the contestant won up until that point. Following this simple set of rules, Larson was able to make over $100,000 off of that one appearance on Press Your Luck, a record-breaking TV show windfall at the time. CBS was so embarrassed by what happened, the network shelved the episodes for almost 20 years after that initial airing. And for good measure, they also banned Larson from the show for life, though technically the man did absolutely nothing wrong. So, how did he do it? Michael Larson was an Ohio air conditioning repairman and a part-time ice cream truck driver, which tells me he had some sort of personal mission to keep people cool, I guess? Well, anyway, in between fixing people's ACs and slinging ice cream sandwiches, Larson watched TV game shows, mainly Press Your Luck. The dude was convinced that he had discovered a pattern in how that big board would randomly light up the squares because, as it turns out, the board did indeed have a pattern. People creating these things were really naive back then, I guess, because if they screwed something like that up today, the show would have to be canceled almost immediately because literally every contestant going up there would be a Michael Larson. The internet would have figured this out so fast. Using nothing but his VCR, the pause button, and what I have to assume was a lot of free time, I'm guessing they had a mild summer in Ohio in '84? Larson completely cracked the Press Your Luck board. He got the patterns down pat, not only figuring out when to stop the light at the biggest cash prizes, but also how to land on the spots that awarded the contestant an extra spin. And that part was key in his strategy. After practicing for months, almost from when the show first premiered in September the year before, Larson cashed most of whatever money he had to his name and flew out to LA. He booked an audition to be on the show, which at first I thought was weird since it's a game show and not a movie or something, but it's not like they can let any random crazy person right off the street into the set. So yeah, I guess auditions kind of makes sense. Now, here's the interesting thing. During the interview process, one of the show's supervisors apparently got wise to Larson's scheme. The dude was a little too enthusiastic about the ace up his sleeve, and that made producers a little hesitant. And in fact, Larson was almost canned from the show entirely, but one of the producers decided to let him on anyway. That was a bad idea. So, the way the game would start is that contestants would answer trivia questions asked by the host in exchange for big board spins. Being that none of the questions involved air conditioner repair or chocolate drumsticks, that part of the show was Larson's Achilles heel. Not only that, but Larson hilariously jumped the gun on one of the questions too, right off the bat. By responding before the host could even actually finish his sentence, he got his first question wrong right then and there.
You've probably got President Franklin D. Roosevelt in your pocket or purse right now because his likeness is on the head side. Michael,
$50 bill.
Of what American coin is the correct answer?
Now, to be fair, other contestants also got a little carried away and answered before the host could actually finish asking the question itself. But those guys got the answers right at least. So Larson ended up with the fewest spins for that first round, and he hit a whammy to boot. So right then and there, if the producers were initially worried that this guy was some kind of mastermind about to fleece CBS for all it was worth, they probably weren't all that worried at this point. And that's when Hurricane Larson hit. In retrospect, it almost seems like Larson was playing a hustle from the get-go, intentionally foregoing his method at first while it was safe, just to size up the other contestants. I can see him being that confident. In the second round, however, Larson went straight with his technique and quickly overtook the other players, winning spin after spin. He missed a few spins at first, probably for being too keyed into the response time on his VCR pause button. I mean, with the remote he was doing this, and at the game he's doing this. There's a little bit of a learning curve, muscle memory and all that. It didn't take long for him to nail the latency on the actual press your luck buzzer and effectively take the board hostage for almost the entire duration of the show. He had so many extra spins, contestants could barely even play the game during his insanely long win streak. And I do mean long. Larson got so many extra spins, the show went longer than scheduled and had to be aired in 2 separate segments a week apart. Dude was winning so much, the sign in front of his spot at the game ran out of characters, and they had to drop the $sign to accommodate the 6 digits he had made. More than once, the host actually insisted Larson would just give up his extra spins in fear that he would inevitably end up landing on a whammy, which wasn't going to happen because the guy had a system. Now, this is what I find kind of funny. The host is expected to play everything up for TV, so naturally he acted somewhat sympathetic to this unusual character that was Larson. In fact, even trying to prevent this modern-day Icarus from flying too close to the sun, as it were.
Michael, I've never seen anyone press their luck like you are, and you are pressing your luck. You must have rolled 25 times without a whammy, and you're still going? Oh my! You're gonna press again? Oh!
Now, while the host seemed to be on Larson's side, in the control room, on the other hand, the situation was the complete opposite of that. The producers were losing their minds, completely convinced Larson was up to some kind of trick. They called up Michael Brockman, CBS's head of daytime programming, and were like, okay, so we got this guy here, and he won't stop winning at Press Your Luck? Do we even have a plan for that? There was nothing they could do at the moment but let the situation play out, hope Larson didn't bankrupt them, and check the tapes after for any evidence of wrongdoing on Larson's part. And they did find a few red flags, like how Larson would celebrate his wins almost immediately after pressing the buzzer, when it was more common for contestants to wait half a second to register that they had won. Another thing that stuck out to producers is that one of Larson's first wins was a Kauai Island trip, and he seemed puzzled, almost disappointed by it, like he expected something else to come up instead, even though he still won a prize. It was a bit of an odd reaction that wasn't quite in line with what the producers were used to seeing from other players. Or the fact that when Larson finally relinquished his iron-like grip of the big board, one of his opponents hit a whammy instantly, making the host actually wonder out loud if Larson somehow knew a whammy was due.
Okay, Ed, hit it.
I don't believe this.
I'm leaving.
Go
Okay,
for it.
you guys locked up, I'm leaving.
Man, I don't know about this, Peter. Stop!
Stop at a whammy. I don't believe it. Michael, did you know that whammy was coming? Wow.
This happened again with the other contestant who, by the rules, had to play the rest of the spins Michael voluntarily passed on. It seemed really suspicious that both other players hit whammies immediately after Larson decided to forgo his extra spins. It really looked like he knew whammies were coming.
Let's go to Janie. 4 spins, you have to take Janie one at a time. Here they come. One's coming. Here comes the first one.
Come on, big bucks. Come on, stop.
Stop at a whammy. No bucks, but we'll take the 3 spins in the pass column, move them over to the earn column. You now have 6 spins in the earn column, none in the pass column, and no dollars and 1 whammy.
So, armed with all this evidence, CBS initially refused to pay the man, but there was absolutely nothing in the rules that said someone couldn't memorize the patterns of the board. He didn't interfere with the system in any way, he simply found a flaw and exploited it perfectly within the constraints of the rules. It's kind of like counting cards at the casino when you think about it. The house isn't gonna like it if it works, but you aren't cheating. Now, something kind of interesting happened when Larson was past the final 3 spins of the game by another contestant. Larson was noticeably flustered by this, going as far as to say that he didn't actually want the spins.
All right, Michael. I didn't want him. Can you handle him? Yeah.
The reason for this is that his method was designed to always land him on extra spin boxes, but at this stage in the game, he couldn't pass up extra spins to his opponents anymore. If the final spin of the game was an extra spin box, he had to spin it, which means he actually ran into a bug in his little algorithm. At this point, fatigue was probably setting in, the show was going long, and since he could only land on extra spins and he couldn't give them up anymore, he had no way out of the game. So nervously, he played his last 3 spins, having to go outside of his proven method in the final spin to finally be able to end the game, winning over $100,000 in the process. This was Michael's only true spin of the entire game, in that he was playing it like the other contestants, just blindly hoping for the best, at the risk of losing everything. The show started replacing the boards frequently after that to prevent other people from larcening up the joint again, and that was that. As for Larson, his story is kind of tragic after his iconic Press Your Luck appearance. He got involved with multi-level marketing schemes and lost some of his money, like most people who get involved in such things. He later ran afoul of several US government agencies, including the FBI, for his involvement with some kind of foreign lottery scam, again in connection with multi-level shenanigans. Dude remained on the lam for 5 years, his whereabouts a mystery, until he turned up dead of throat cancer in Florida in 1999. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. He messed up again before that. He entered this radio contest that would award people $30,000 if they were able to find sequential US currency. If they found legal tender dollars that had sequential numbers, serial numbers. So he withdrew all of his money and started counting it at home to find these sequential bills. He couldn't find any, so he deposited half of it, and then while he was at church, somebody broke into his house and stole the other half. That case, by the way, was never solved. And yeah, so then he died of throat cancer. And that's the story of Michael Larson, half genius, half irredeemable scammer, all-around American folk hero. If you like stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe, you know the drill, right? And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done.